All right. Awesome. Well, sorry about that, guys. Not the best tech savvy person in the game, but we got it. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. So today we're teaching about the equipment course number 1, fountain soda machines. I think you've all kind of been exposed to the fountain equipment and also been trained a little bit on it, but it doesn't hurt to be refreshed. I hope you guys can all hear me okay. I know we've had a lot of audio issues in the past. We got some new things we're trying out over here. This is the kind of a breakdown, kind of a picture of what the fountain machine looks like. Gives you the dimensions and all this stuff. Obviously, you see where it says the fountain machines are the pretty much the central part of the most convenience stores. It is. It's a big thing. You guys often heard us talk. It's about at least 100% or more profit for each convenience store. It's a big thing. I call it America's drug because everybody loves soda. It's a big thing, and because how often they're used, obviously, the service of them is very important in maintaining them. We got ice that goes with them. We got the RO system that usually goes with them. This is coming with Mavericks most of the time. We got those RO filtration system, which is something that's very important. But as you guys can tell, we're going to try to focus heavily on just the fountain machines. So we can go through this. Special thanks to Lancer for this content. They've been out a few times here at the Salt Lake City branch or actually over at Mariani's. We've been over there to have the opportunity to hear from them directly, and it's been nice. They have great machines, and there's a lot of things in the future for them as well. All right, machine overview at the front. This is what it kind of looks like. This would be an FS30. Obviously, Mavericks, there's probably only a handful of Mavericks out there that only have one fountain machine on their counter. Those are the really small ones. But 95% of all the Mavericks have 2 FS30s next to them, which make it a FS60. Merchandiser, splash guard, cup rest. That key lock on the side of the unit, we can get into more detail with that if we can get to the slideshow for that. Most of the time, that key lock is mostly for the customer, like for Maverick employees or the customers, I guess, to be able to lock out the machine manually so that they can wipe down the front of the touch pads and wipe down the nozzles and drain out the drip tray and do whatever they need to do to do some kind of small maintenance on these fountain machines. Dispensing nozzle, hopefully we can get into that. I think a lot of you guys that have worked with us with soda, we kind of know what the dispensing nozzle is. It's a good part of the machine. Ice dispensing lever and drip tray. Maverick is very adamant about the ice dispense lever. They don't like us touching the actual ice chute. That's why there's a lever there. Supposed to be that whole germ-free type thing. So if you guys see any of those out in the Mavericks, let's make it a note to maybe get that replaced. Most of the time, it's the bottom half of the chute that is worn off. It's not necessarily that the lever is broken. It's mostly the chute is worn off from customers viciously pushing their cup onto that lever over time and eventually wearing out that bottom of that chute. We'll talk about that more. Light assembly. I want to touch real quick. Lancer had actually, and we'll get into it, and I'll show you some more. I'll explain some more about some of the syrup piping here. But Lancer recently came out with a new model for the FS30. It didn't really change too much as of what you see right now. But as far as the plumbing goes for the syrup lines, some of that stuff has shifted to the left so that it would be easier for the installers to install your flavor shots on this machine. I'll kind of explain that when we get to that point. Oh, sorry about that. Going a little fast here. Syrup and water modules, we'll get more into those through the slide. Just modules, these are all valves, solenoid valves. We'll get in those and hopefully break them down as we go through the slide. Carbonator pump and motor, a very critical part of the fountain machine, obviously. We'll get into that and get that broken down too and talk a little bit more about that. Cold plate drain tubes. There's a 4-inch cold plate in these fountain machines. The ice sits on that 4-inch cold plate. Your drink naturally comes out of about 36 degrees. So technically, I mean, a lot of people, some customers like a lot of ice. They like that beverage super cold. Some customers don't like any ice, and that's fine. With this fountain machine, it comes out at 36. It's pretty refreshing, I guess, to some. These drain tubes here is to help get rid of the condensation of that ice and on that cold plate, and any of that ice that melts over time, it has to go somewhere. You can't have a swimming pool of water sitting in the fountain machine, so it goes down the drain right here through these drain tubes.
Yeah. This is Shane. As a rule of thumb, if you got any fountain calls, I would take a minute to clean these out, or else it could come back and bite you. If that water's not drained, you can get up to 5 gallons sitting in there. With 5 gallons of water sitting in there, that cold plate's not going to do its job, and it's going to start pushing out syrup and water at about 50, 60 degrees. So if you can just take a minute or two, there's a little clean tool you can get to put in there. You can even use a straw. I've used a straw a couple times. It's like a 2-minute job. If you get any calls on a fountain equipment, just hit those real quick. It's not that big of a deal. So
yeah, a lot of calcium over time builds up in those. You'll see it. Like if you have a consistent drip, that's what you want to see. If you see a very slow drip, now when I say consistent drip, I'm saying like every 2 to 3 seconds there should be a drip coming out of there. If you see like a 10-second drip, I would pay attention to that and maybe clean it out a little bit. Syrup and water connections, we'll get into that. That's where all your tubing goes for your syrup, for your product. Yeah. Your agitation motor sits behind that protected guard. That's your inside the fountain machine where your ice goes. The agitation motor, that's where that's at. Some of you guys have seen us when we changed out a ice maker or installed fountain machines. You've seen the paddle wheel, the shaft inside those. It's all attached to this motor right here, the agitator motor. Carbonator relief valve, whenever pumping down a fountain machine or needing to check the carbonation probes, this relief valve is what you guys will need to use to check those things or to pump down the fountain machine. Do not open this yellow tab up, this relief valve, when this machine is operating. You will spray about 60 psi or 80 psi of pressure over the store. It might hit a customer, so you do not want to open that up while it's in operation. The bonus flavor connections, that's your flavor shots like your cherry, vanilla, lime, grape. That's where all that goes. And like I said before, on the new models, all those bottom syrup and water connections, those all kind of tightened up and shifted over to the left, so that when they do the plumbing for those bonus flavor connections, they gave us room to feed the plumb up to those connections. For those that haven't done an install on these, this type of install, this setup right here, getting those 1/4-inch lines up to those flavor shots are tough. Let alone having to make a repair if there's a leak on those, because it's not easy. It's very tight. But with the new model, like I said, they shifted all those syrup and water connections, the bottom, all to the left to give us a few inches more so that we could plumb our bonus flavor connections, our plumbing there. Like I said, the carbonator probe, that kind of plays hand in hand with that carbonator relief valve. Whenever we need to check those, sometimes they get dirty. They get a fault reading. Those probes, when you depressurize that system, you're able to relieve all the pressure in the actual fountain machine, and then pull out that carbonator probe and then inspect and do, I think, a continuity test on that carbonator probe to confirm if it is bad or not. That's not a very common part that goes bad, but it is a part that does go bad sometimes. CO2 connection, that's where the CO2 comes into the fountain machine. I've often told people that you want to be careful with that block right there. If that block breaks at all during some kind of either remodel or removing the machine or putting it in place, installing it, that whole machine just went down the drain. That's a very important part. That there's that mounting block right there. So we got to be careful when lifting those machines up with lifts and stuff like that. That CO2 connection, that CO2 coming into those fountain machines, and we'll get into it, is about, we like to put them about 80 psi. This is a breakdown, or I guess a look over all the valves and stuff. We'll kind of pull everything up here and explain everything. You got your power supply box up on the top left. That's where your power comes into the machine. You got a transformer. You got two 10 amp fuses in there. One of the fuses control the lights on the front. Another fuse controls I think the control board. It controls the control board. So that power supply box is a pretty stout power supply component. It's not common that the whole board or anything goes bad. We have had a few of them go bad. Most of the time it's something simple as a fuse. The ice door solenoid, that ice door solenoid, it's a stout solenoid. I've to this day haven't replaced one. I don't know how many Shane or Barry have replaced in their time, but that solenoid is a pretty solid solenoid. They're great. So yeah, that has a little arm on there that when you push that ice lever, that's what's being engaged to open the little black flapper there on the top part of your ice chute to allow your ice to be dispensed.
One thing I would like to touch base on, and I've seen it a lot lately, is you'll have play in that ice chute door. Where that comes from is neither because this solenoid's not adjusted correctly, so that door's just slamming as hard as it can, and that solenoid will rip the plastic right out of that door and make space, So if you're on site, again, this is 4-screw adjustment. You just loosen the 4 screws on the sides, and you just adjust that right to where the door's not going to be slamming, and then you won't be changing upper ice chutes.
Syrup and water modules. Those are your valves. Like I said before, this is what all your syrup, your flavor shots, your product for your fountain machine, and also your water. That's where all this stuff comes through, is all fed and calibrated and adjusted for dispense. Your nozzles, that's where all your product eventually comes out into the cup. We'll break that down. Your control board, this is where obviously self-explanatory, it's where all the controls and adjustments are made for this fountain machine. This is where it could be changed to how you want things to be dispensed, timings, agitations, all that kind of stuff is all done through this board. Controlling certain valves, like I said, how you want it dispensed and stuff like that. There's like a whole breakdown on that on the control board itself. That it's pretty lengthy. There's a lot to do on that board. It's kind of insane. Connection cables. So there's 4 connection cables that go down to your
Hey
touch.
Tyson,
Yeah.
Real quick, I got a question. We get a lot of questions about adjusting the timing for agitation with the nugget ice. Can maybe not in this section, but can you touch on that if that's not covered?
Yeah, I will. It's not there. So Lancer is very how do you say it? They don't like to adjust the agitation times at all. We they kind of say that they're already preset, that when you put it when you in the control board you put it to pebble, and then if you put it to cube, they think in their eyes it's already been calibrated, adjusted accordingly. However, whenever like for these Scotsmans that we've been dealing with, we've been having to minimize the amount of time it's agitating because of that micro ice is so small, and we've been having a lot of common issues of it getting clogged to the chute. Lancer will issue a code that they'll walk you through a series of things to go through the board, which will to a hidden menu. And that code, once you use that code they give you, it expires after 30 minutes and it is no longer used again ever. And so they'll give you like a 2-minute talk of like how uncommon they don't like to give this code out so that you can make the adjustments to your agitation time. However, when we do ask them that we got a Scotsman and we're trying to make it right on these fountain machines, they're able to help us out and issue that code. I think it's 2,000 milliseconds or something like that. Every 2,000.
So what we've been doing is the rotation on it is normally set for 4,000. We've been cutting it in half and just setting it to 2,000. Right now we have it that way in Springville, Ephraim, and Huntington. That seems to be working out all right for us. We haven't had calls back on those yet.
So, and like I said,
So we're actually setting those for more agitation.
Less.
Perfect. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
there's a misconception out there that we want to agitate more with nugget ice.
Mm-mm.
So I just want to make sure that we're clear that we are not setting it for more because it breaks it down more. So
Right.
I just want to make sure that everybody on this call understood we don't want to agitate more. We want to agitate the least amount as possible and let the agitation happen at the time of the draw.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and I'll kind of touch base here. On a Cornelius unit, which we don't see a lot of, you can run Scotsman's ice, the micro nugget, fill the bin all the way full with no problems. The reason why is because you can shut off that agitation time. And they made it easy on their equipment, but Lancer.
So yeah, the agitation, we don't want it we don't want it to agitate like it has been. We want to minimize that amount of agitation. We just want it to be able to kind of shuffle through that ice for a second, and that's it. We don't want it to spin all the way around a few times in a certain amount of time. So we kind of been able to minimize that time of agitation, and like Shane has said, we haven't had any problems at some of these locations. I know that's probably going to be something that we're going to have to maybe expand on when you guys give us a call, because I know some of you guys are probably already thinking, well, we got all these Scotsmans out here and we're having problems like this, so let's get this worked out. And we're more than happy to help you after that, after this presentation and everything. Here's your install and connections. We got our water, CO2, syrup, and flavor shots. Where you see, let's start right on the water source. We got a water booster. We got a water regulator that's regulated for 50 PSI. As you guys can see, that water regulator is on it goes up to the carbonator pump. It doesn't need to go on both lines. It doesn't need to go onto the main water on the far left. That main one on the far left is just straight water coming out of whenever you push that water button on the touchpad, that's just straight water. However, that carbonator pump, it can only handle 50 PSI, so that's why it's regulated at 50 PSI. If it has any more than that, then we start putting havoc on that carbonator pump and eventually goes out. You guys can see over to the right, the far right, we got our CO2, and you see them both where they say 75. Well, we have our racks at 60 and our 65, is it 60, 65? 65 and we have our fountain machines at 80. The reason why we put the racks at 65 is because you're just pushing product up to the pump. You're not. That's all you're going. You don't need. We're kind of, I guess, in a sense, saving some CO2. We're not having to use a lot to get syrup up to the pumps. But however, for the right ratio that we're mixing with for Maverick, and according to what they want, we put their fountain machines at 80 and make the bricks accordingly. But this, obviously, from Lancer, it's okay to put everything across the board at 75.
Just real quick before Tyson switches over, there's a couple things I want to touch. One is that water regulator. Now, it is important that it's only on carb only and after the booster. The reason for that, first of all, that booster is just a safety mechanism. That's all it's doing. If that water regulator is not in play, that it will run off that water booster instead of the carbonator to fill up the tank inside the machine. What that will do is it'll give you carb water for the first 3 seconds of running, and then it'll just start to go flat. You'll just start getting regular water because that booster's throwing in water and the probe can't measure correctly. So we really got to see and make sure that that water regulator is in play. And like I said, if you run it a carbonated head for a couple seconds, you'll notice the difference if it's wrong. So it'll start from carbonated, and then it'll just look like regular water with no bubbles, no nothing. So what you want is just that pure white cone coming down.
I'll add a little bit there too. So if you ever see that happen and your regulator's in the right spot, then your regulator is went bad. I've saw that a few times. It doesn't happen very often, but it's just something to keep in your mind.
Perfect. These, where it says bibs on all these pumps, we actually, Maverick has done away with these are flow jet pumps. Maverick has since moved to SureFlow pumps. I guess they're a little bit more reliable, and obviously I think cost is a little bit better on these, on the SureFlows versus the flow jets. IC still uses flow jets, but for fountain equipment at Mavericks, it's all SureFlow pumps. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and stop and ask me. I'm more than happy to answer questions as well.
Just at some point, Tyson, can we touch on what we should be stocking maybe at the end of the presentation, what we should like baseline stock be having on our trucks for these machines? That just, I know that we should know, but just to touch on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Tyson,
yeah.
where we're not using those flow jets anymore, are we changing them out for the IC machines, or are we not?
Well, this is what I've kind of been doing for Maverick is if IC can't get out there and Maverick has asked us to do it, I'll go ahead and help them out. That's just because that's Maverick. But IC is usually pretty responsive and they do take care of it. But I usually have the guys stock maybe two of those on the van.
The answer for Maverick is there's a filtering process where that call actually gets looked at twice before it even comes to us. So if you get the call, yes, they have already gone through the process of figuring out that IC will not show up, and we're their secondary contractor to IC. So if you're like down there in St. George, Sean, we'll want to have some of those at least at the shop for sure to be able to help them out when that call does come through the wire.
Perfect. Yeah, I got a bunch. I was just going to say, if we're not servicing them, I'm going to send them back for credit. But if we're going to serve them, we'll service them, we'll keep them.
Yeah, we are the secondary backup on those calls. So
thanks for that clarification, Jim. Water inlet connections. The far left one is, like I said, your straight water that comes in. It's not regulated. It's coming straight from that water booster pump that holds 2 gallons of water. That's just whenever you dispense just water out of the fountain machine, that's where that's coming from. However, whenever you get bubbly water, soda water, or soda, it's coming out of that right side, that red square that's going through that carbonator pump. Water dispenses through a 3/8 hose from the water booster. Stack pressure is below 70 psi. Like I said, all the Mavericks have the 2 gallon tanks of water. they store two gallons of water ready to be dispensed. Whenever that runs low, it then pulls in more water and always keeps 2 gallons of water reserved on that water boosters or water booster tank pump. Water to carb is 3/8 as well, with a 50 psi regulator. We kind of explained about that. It's more important to have that water regulator on the carbonator pump than on the actual inlet water. The CO2 pressure is at 25 psi above coming in. Common issues in troubleshooting. All right, we kind of went over this already. We kind of jumped the gun, but we explained to you guys about these drain boots here. They that cold plate inside that bin. We get calcium. Like I said, if you guys don't see a consistent drip like within 2 or 3 seconds, and you see a 10-second drip, then we probably need to investigate these drain boots. Another common thing is we in our term call it sugar boogers. I don't know if you guys heard that before. It sounds disgusting, but soda does get nasty, especially over time as it goes down the drain. It clogs the drain, and it forms a wall of nasty slime and goo. And eventually we get a call saying that our drip tray is overflowing with water and draining on the counter and everything like that. So we'll go out there. We'll just take our CO2 and we'll just blow that drain out, CO2 or nitrogen. We'll blow that drain out, and then we'll dump hot water down there. And then if you guys have some kind of draining solution to help recoat the walls of that drain tubing, go ahead and flush a little bit down that to help keep from syrup and other things building back up on those walls of that drain tubing. This is flow adjustments. A lot of you guys that I've been out to train and stuff, I've taught you guys this is how right here is how you guys would calibrate a solenoid to get the right ratio of the flow of syrup and water or carbonated water mixed. Flow rate too high or too low is a common problem. Obviously that means it's either going to taste really flat or too much carbonation, too sweet. It's all because of the flow rate. It says to increase the flow rate, you turn the adjustment screw clockwise, so you go in. To decrease, turn the screw counterclockwise. I want to emphasize on the fact that if you screw that all the way in, eventually you will stop the flow of whatever product you're dispensing out. It won't dispense anything. Sometimes something that we've kind of picked up is like those things get coated with syrup, and so they have a hard time dispensing. So we'll screw it all the way in and back it out to kind of break up the syrup, and then if that's the problem, then eventually we'll run hot water through that line so that we can break up all that syrup that's on there. It's one of those tricks that we've learned to do.
Just real quick, I want to add something on this because I don't even think Lance knows about it. So a while back, Pepsi and Coke kind of switched their diets to aspartame. I don't know if you guys remember that or not. Aspartame plays havoc on syrup pumps.
Hi, good morning. Can I help you?
So it starts to eat the
21 with orange
O-rings.
juice.
21 with orange juice?
Yep.
Yes,
Thank you.
you want to look for espresso?
Do you want orange juice with that?
Hey,
Can
can you guys mute your phone? Whoever's ordering breakfast, we can hear you. So can you guys mute your phones, please?
Oh,
Thank you.
But anyhow, aspartame tears apart the seals in the pumps, and then it will carry it down to these valves. And if you look, you see that little hole right there on the right-hand side. It actually clogs that, and you're not able to bricks. You're not able to do anything. It will also clog the solenoid to a fact of when you hit the button, you will still have syrup coming out after the carb water or the syrup is stopped. In those case scenarios, I would change out the pump. I would flush a line. I'd pull the valve apart and clean it.
We'll explain to you how to pull a valve when we get to that point. Broken nozzles are easily replaced. Easily replaced. I think that's an understatement. They're really not that easy to replace. I mean, I don't know if you guys recall seeing the nozzle back at the previous slides here, but they have all these tubes from like 4 or 5 different solenoids going into it, and to get in there, it's not easy. It's very tight, and and you don't want to misplace the tubing or where it lands, because you don't want to push Diet Coke and get Dr. Pepper or vice versa. So you got to make sure you land those correctly too as well. As you can see here in this motion, this person's turning this thing counterclockwise, this is a way for people to clean the nozzle. Maverick, I think, are encouraged to every once in a while pull these off and just take a warm sanitized washcloth and clean these up. However, there is some locations that we've been into where it's very obvious they do not do this. So this is something that we could do right along with those drain boots. We can take it 30 seconds and pull these sleeves off and wipe them down while we're in the store. If we're in there and we're already billing a minimum of an hour and it's something easy, go ahead and take 30 seconds and pull these off and take a sanitizing warm washcloth, wipe these down inside the sleeve and on the actual nozzle and on the bottom. This will help the flow of the product to dispense better. Not only you'll know also that when you push a product and you get all this choppy flow, like a choppy flow looking of syrup and stuff like that in product, you know that that's probably most likely going to be dirty. So when you wipe that down and you get it all cleaned up and put it back together, your flow of product will look a lot more cleaner, look nice. Brixing. This is kind of one of the most important things that we do on the soda fountain equipment. This is probably one of in the top 5 calls that we get from Maverick is that the product doesn't taste very good. And so we then go and perform a bricks on their fountain equipment. And the customers will tell you that they'll tell you it's specific flavors, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, Pepsi, Diet Coke, whatever it is. However, let's go ahead and take the initiative to, if 1 or 2 or 3 of them are off, let's go ahead and just do the whole machine, do both machines. Take care of them both, check them all, it wouldn't hurt. Just so that helps you that maybe tomorrow they don't call you and say, well, actually now this one's acting up. Well, you went ahead and adjusted them all, and so that saves you a trip from going back out there on a different one. Should be 15 ounces in 4 seconds. To be honest with you guys, I've never really timed my flow rate, but this is definitely something that we could practice and try to get a hang of. Shut off the syrup supplied to the nozzle by closing the shut off and back block to disconnect the coil wire and connection. This is explaining to you how we remove a solenoid. However, I want to be able to show you a solenoid before trying to explain this to you, because without seeing the picture, it's kind of hard. For those of you that I've been able to train and stuff, you guys, I have showed you how to remove a solenoid and what that takes, but just saying it, reading it right here is not going to make justice. I want you guys to be able to see a picture and explain to you how to do that. Just dispense water into the bricks cup for 4 seconds. Verify water is 15 ounces, adjust if needed. Open, shut off, or reconnect coil wire once flow rate is set. It's a picture of a brixing cup. It kind of shows you the syrup and the water / soda. If you read on the brixing cups for those that have brixing cups, it shows you right there where they like to see the ratio for each one of the bricks. Is obviously you see they like to see it straight across. However, on the brixing cup, it also shows that you can have it 1 high or 1 less on the syrup and you'll be fine. If you're 3 tiles, 4 tiles below on your syrup, then you're probably going to have a pretty strong carbonated drink. And it's obviously going to taste off. If you guys have your syrup 3 or 4 tiles above the water soda / soda, and it's going to taste flat. It's not going to taste good. So we got to find that median when we break straight across. There is a ratio that we follow for each product.
Can you hear me?
Huh? For each product, there is a different ratio for Pepsi. For all the products except for diet drinks, we like to see them at 5.1 on all the products except for diet drinks. 5-1 on your diet drinks. We like to see them at 5.5. And the reason for that is because we all know that the diet drinks are already water-based. They're not very strong, and so we try to balance that ratio of making it taste good with the soda water or the carbonated water.
And just to kind of add to that, and sometimes it's hard to find, if you actually look on the bib, it has a recommended ratio to it. Just that diets are thinner, they're more watery, and that's why we brix them a little bit higher. Now, I just want to make it clear, it's only on Coke. So for Coke diets that are going to be 1 or 5.5 to 1. That is because Pepsi just did all their stuff the same way. They thickened up their syrup a little bit. So that's just going to be your Diet Coke, your caffeine-free Coke, and your Coke Zero. So it's just those 3, but there's 4 of them because you got 2 Diet Cokes. So if you were to brix those 4 to the 5 to 5 and then hit all the others from 5 to 1, you are spot on.
Sorry about my little crying baby, but also Coke Zero is 5.5 as well.
Perfect. Okay, here's your 10-degree pitch back to front of a cold plate in a fountain machine. This is a good picture of explaining to you guys of where our syrup, where it kind of goes, and how it's all hooked up here. Like we said before, when that ice is on that 4-inch cold plate, it helps with the syrup and the way it tastes. If there's no ice on that cold plate, your soda is going to taste disgusting. Ice bridging. Ask, what is an ice bridge? Ice bridge is like we've had this a lot with the Scotsmans, where the agitation, it would then go through the ice, but it would form an ice cave. There would be no ice on the cold plate, but it would bridge over the top of the auger and all the stuff inside the bin there. Then your product is going to taste nasty because that ice is not on the cold plate. It's bridging inside. The agitator helps break up the ice and ensure that the cold plate is covered with ice. So we want to make sure that there is ice all the time on that 4-inch cold plate. It is going to play a factor in how your beverage tastes. And that also helps with brixing. If we don't have any ice on the cold plate, we go to brix it, we're going to have some issues. You can tell if there's something going on when you go to do a brix. It wouldn't hurt either to maybe even test your product with like a thermometer to see what the temperature is coming out. Like we said before, it's about 36 degrees is what your product should be dispensing out of these fountain machines. Ice machine and water systems. In the connections to the fountain machine, please pay special attention to the ice machines and water systems. I don't think we can really stress it enough. I think whenever we get a soda fountain call, we go out and we automatically start thinking that it's all the soda fountain machine, which maybe it is, but we got to think there's 2 other pieces of equipment that are playing a big factor into these fountain machines, and that's your ice machines and RO filtration systems, at least in Mavericks. So it wouldn't hurt to maybe take a few seconds to walk in the back and take a look at some water filters, look at the dates, maybe hear if it's even working, if the RO system's working, if it has one. making sure that your ice machine is working properly. We get some of these common issues that it says here is the leak from the ice machine. Just yesterday, I was out on a job. They had an old top kit on a fountain machine that we had to pull out and put in the new one. It was leaking. The common issues is it leaks on the front, left, and right side. Eventually, it gets on the counter, and then at that point is when we receive a phone call saying they'll say the fountain machine's leaking. And then when we get there and inspect it, we find and realize that it either has a old top kit, or there is no top kit, or it wasn't installed properly. When I mean installed properly is how I install the top kits is I'll get the new top kit, and I'll insulate both the top and the bottom with that foam tape. That way we're completely insulated. That's going to help with any condensation from within the fountain machine or coming from the actual ice machine itself. It'll help absorb that condensation and not form any kind of water puddles or leak down the side of a fountain machine onto the counter. Lack of water pressure from our water filtration system. Like I said, let's just take a look at those. I think on a normal running RO filtration system, we like to see them at 50. Is it 50 PSI? If you see that is the left gauge,
It's all the way to the right.
all the way to the right gauge on the RO system. If that's at 50 PSI, then we're good. Most of the time, those water filters are probably good. They're still filtering and working good. If they're not, then the pressure would be a lot higher. If you see it up above 50, like 175, then we probably need to start looking at some water filters and start doing some maintenance and troubleshooting on the RO system. Yeah, wrapping it up. Is there any questions? I know I was kind of fast. I hope I explained a little bit to you guys. Hope you answer some of your questions for you. If you guys have anything, let me know.
So are we moving away from the Scotsman's in with the Mavericks?
Jim, where you at, Jim? Jim, are you here?
I don't think he's on here anymore.
Okay. Sean, that's a good question. I don't want to make that final call, but I can tell you that from what I was told by Jim, he said from here on out, we're going to start trying to push Hoshizaki nuggets into these Mavericks. I haven't been installing Scotsmans on the past few stores, so but I don't know that exact answer.
That's
like
correct.
I
So right now we're going to be doing the nugget with the regular ice, the nugget ice, not the microchip. That's where we change the extruding. That's where we change the extruding head and stuff. So if we go, they're actually, we're looking at some different options as far as fountain. Not really saying that anything's going to happen or not, but if you put it on top of a different fountain other than a Lancer, we might be able to go to the smaller chip. But as for right now, that Lancer FS30, the Hoshizaki Nugget is the spec. So when you guys are ordering your ice machines, just make sure you're ordering that Hoshizaki Nugget for right now. That's what came down from Lauren about 3 weeks ago. So we were on the fence of which one. You'll still see Scotsmans come out of the new construction stores because sometimes new construction takes a while to make changes. But so you're still going to see Scotsmans out there. So we got to coach our guys on both machines.
Perfect. Thank you.
Like we said before, the biggest problem that we're having with these Scotsmans is the agitation thing. So if you guys need some more guidance and help with that, feel free to reach out to me or Shane, and we can definitely lead and guide you guys to get that resolved and help with that.
We've been finding the BinStat option's been working better than the KMS module. So we've been doing a little bit, unless you feel otherwise, Tyson. But we've been putting BinStats in their place, and seem to be doing better.
Let's roll. Let's keep doing that. I'm totally fine with that. I like it. Jim asked me to also maybe elaborate on what maybe we could carry on our vehicles for some of this stock. Some of the common things that we run into for at least the Maverick soda fountain equipment is your bib connectors is a common one. The green ones, which is the Pepsi one, they seem to break a lot. I would stock some of those. Jim, do you want me to elaborate on like quantity or just the parts in general?
Yeah, just kind of go over real quick what we should be seeing on the specific fountain guys trucks, and then what we should be having at least in the branches.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So you want to carry bib connectors. Bib connectors. The green ones are a common one that break all the time. We usually try to stock at least about 10 of those on our van. If you want to store some at the warehouse, probably wouldn't hurt to have a little bit more. They're not very expensive. They're an inexpensive a part. They are a common part, like I said, though, that break all the time. You're obviously going to want to carry a lot of Oetiker clamps. Your common Oetiker clamps are like your 13.3s, your 14.0s, 15.7s, 17.0s. These are all for any of the tubing that we're dealing with. Those are the common ones that we work with. I mean 12.3, not 13.3s, 12.3s. And as far as quantity on those, I like to, if you're not doing installs, it probably wouldn't hurt to maybe have 100 of each of those. But if you're doing installs, some of these guys, we obviously carry about 300 of each of these. That's a little much, but like I said, if you're not doing an install, maybe 100 max. Another common problem that we should probably stock on the vans are SureFlow pumps. Those are the pumps that are on the racks above all the product. The piston or something to do with the piston inside there maybe get jammed or gunked. We also sometimes, and it blows off CO2, or it just doesn't want to pump anymore. It doesn't want to flow because of the pistons jammed, whatever it is. Those SureFlow pumps, I would probably carry about 5 of those roughly, 5 or 8 of those on your guys' vehicles. As far as the shop goes, maybe have a good 15. That's just so that if the technicians run out, then you have obviously some at the shop that you can also hand a few of them out to the guys that are running low. Like I said about flow jet pumps, we don't really change those too much. Like I said, I have the guys usually have about 2 of those on their vans, and like Jim was saying, we are I guess a second contract for Maverick on IC, so we'll be ready to help with whatever it is that they need with on their IC machines as well. So we have a couple flow jets. As far as your shop goes, maybe keep like 4 or 8 of those. Don't forget, you guys, you can't perform any of these repairs without your crimpers and cutoffs and bricks cups. So those are kind of those are kind of important to have so that you guys can perform these repairs. You guys don't need to worry about too much about like the Ys and the Ts, the fittings. Those are mostly for installs, but if you have to make a repair, down the line, it wouldn't hurt to have maybe quarter-inch splicers, maybe a pack of 10 of those, 3/8 splicers, maybe a pack of 10 of those at the shop, maybe have like 25 or so. But that's, like I said, if you're having to cut into a line you're going to be removing an existing splicer or even a T or whatever, you have those small amount of parts. Your lower bottom half of the eye chute, which by Maverick, they do not want the clear ones. They do not like the clear bottom half eye chute. They want a black one. The reason being, it helps with letting the customer know that it's somewhat clean, because we don't see all the hard water and calcium being built up in the bottom half of the eye chute. Levers, like I said, is another one. Your nozzles are a good one to have. As far as your eye chutes go, you probably want to carry about, I think the guys carry about 2 or 4 of those, 6 of those. As far as your shop goes, that is a common part that goes out. I would probably carry about 10 or 12 of those at the shop. Your nozzles, that's the nozzle assembly. we change those out quite a bit too. I would probably carry about 4 or 5 of those on your van. Maybe at the shop, maybe like 10 or 12 of those. Touch pads, those I would carry at least one. They sometimes, most of the time, those touch pads, they usually just get intermittent through wires from the communication wire up to the board, and all it takes is just maybe a reset or maybe taking the wire off and reconnecting it. Touch pads don't really go out too much, but we have definitely had our fair share of replacement on those. So maybe just one touch pad for the shop, maybe 3 or 4.
Well, and I kind of want to add to that because it wasn't mentioned. Maverick is now changing out their own stickers, and when they go to pull off the sticker, they're ripping the front of the face pad off those keypads, and that face pad has a ribbon cable that goes into it, and they'll rip that off too. So you get a call to go to that site, you take a look at it. None of your buttons are working. You reset the machine. None of your buttons are still working. You start looking down at an angle. It's lucky we got clear keypads, and you can see that if a ribbon connector is connected or not. If it's not connected, all you got to do is on that connector, there's a brown part and a white part. You pull the brown part towards you, you can slide that ribbon cable in, push that brown part back in, your keypad works. So we don't change those too much.
Yeah. Another good one to carry probably on your van is a water booster pump. Let me make clear that we don't want to carry a whole water booster, like the tank and the pump together. The reason the tank is not the part that goes bad. The tank is just a storage that holds 2 gallons of water. It's the pump that usually goes bad. The reason why we just want to carry the pump is because we got $70 versus $250. For the whole giddy up, it's $250 when we're only technically replacing the pump. That's only $75. So just maybe carry just the diaphragm, just the pump. You don't need to carry the actual tank and all that. Maybe have 1 or 2 of the full assembly of the water boosters at the shop. But as far as your van goes, maybe just the diaphragm pump. Water regulators, it wouldn't hurt to get in the habit of, if you're going to be changing out the pump if you're already there to change out the pump on the water booster pump, go ahead and change out the water regulator. That would really, be a pain if you replace that water pump and then next day you're back out there because it's doing the same thing because you could have replaced it was the actual water regulator. That water regulator is inexpensive. It's not very expensive, so it wouldn't hurt to get in the habit of, if you're doing anything down at the water booster pump, making any kind of repair, go ahead and change out that water regulator. Carry maybe 6 of those on your van, and maybe a handful of those at the shop, like 12.
Now, I don't know if you guys have done too many installs, but I get a ton of them from installs because we do 3 racks, and each rack comes with 1 of them. So I always get that spare. So I got a whole ton of them.
Yeah.
So let me touch on that real quick. We did just sign a contract with Maverick about 3 weeks ago that we are the number 1 installation contractor, and it's no longer in the GC's hands to make the choice of who does that. So where they were using Pepsi and us, and so we have a locked-in price. So what that means is it's going out to the branches. So you guys need to get familiar with the installation of these machines. We'll be sending Shane and Tyson out to the branches as help to do these machines if it's your first time installing them at that location. But we can no longer travel everybody from Salt Lake. So as new stores are stood up in your area, you guys most likely will be doing that install. So keep a watch out for those new stores. And as they do that, make sure that you're communicating with Tyson and Shane exactly what's going on. We'll know about the timelines, but then you guys need to be ready to help there. And if the managers or the technicians want to be involved, make sure you communicate that as well to Tyson and Shane so that we can get that set up. But that is in effect. It was signed 3 weeks ago, so we're going to start seeing a lot of traction this next year with the new equipment installs at all the stores.
Perfect. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We do have a truck stock list that I'd be more than happy to send that over to each one of you guys if that's what you guys want. This is an awesome. This is awesome. This whole soda thing is great. It's amazing to me that our company is able to take on this. I know that a lot of us that come from all different parts of the trade, and especially coming into the refrigeration side, and then knowing that this company here has a beverage side is just something else. I think it's awesome. It's unique and different, and I look forward to growing it. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, anything, if I could help lead you guys in any way, I'm more than happy to do that. We're excited. I think this is going to be great. And the same for Shane. If you guys have any questions, I know sometimes I'm not the easiest to get a hold of, but if you can't get a hold of Shane, I'm here. And if you can't get a hold of me, Shane is there. So it's great. I look forward to doing this and growing it. If you guys have any questions, now's a good time.
Yeah, Tyson, could you go ahead and forward that truck stock list to me? I'd really appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks.
Yep.
And if you guys have any more questions on ice machine nugget application, I think we've worked out most of the bugs. But if you haven't ran into those, let us know. We've been working individually with each of the branches to kind of work through those situations. I know St. George, Vegas, Arizona, and Denver for sure have all had a few questions on a couple stores. So hopefully we work those out. If there's still lingering questions on setup or calibration, you can reach out to me as well.
Perfect.
Thanks, Tyson.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Class.
Thanks. You guys
So
have a great day,
guys.
Go ahead.
No, saying the same thing. Have a good day, guys. Appreciate it.
All right,
See ya.
thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Toyson.
Yep.
Thanks, bud.
Have a good day, fellas.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks for your help, Barry.
Uh-huh.